Hi guys, it's Miss Biggs. Great job on finishing up our unit for Romeo and Juliet. We're now going to look back again at poetry because it's a really fun thing to do. It's a great way to get creative, and it'll be a good exercise. Today we're using class to remind ourselves the important things about poetry. You need to go look back at our PowerPoint that I have in It's Learning, and also I'm going to look at two poems with you together. Now, you do not need to print this out and do it with me. You're fine to just pay attention. But I'm just going to show you guys the steps you need to remember to do when you're looking at a poem so you can correctly pull information out of it. So we're going to do one that's a little more modern and one that's a little bit more formal of a poem. And we're starting with How to Eat a Poem by Eve Merriam. So I'll go ahead and read it for us. Don't be polite, bite in. Pick it up with your fingers and lick the juice that may run down your chin. It is ready and ripe now, whenever you are. You do not need a knife or fork or spoon or plate or napkin or tablecloth, for there is no core, no stem or rind or pit or seed or skin to throw away. So simple enough. It's a pretty straightforward poem. So we're going to talk about it. Now, this is one of those poems where the title definitely matters because it tells us what the poem is going to be about, how to eat a poem. So Eve Merriam is kind of giving us a message about how to look at and consume poetry. So for her first stanza, remember stanzas are a set of lines, so we have lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in stanza 1, 6 and 7 in stanza 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there we go, to make up our 3 stanzas for our poem. So she starts out with, don't be polite, bite in, pick it up with your fingers, and lick the juice that may run down your chin. Now, we already know that the it that she must be referring to is poem. So we're talking about our poem. But she kind of uses it in a representative way. So pick it, the poem, up with your fingers and lick the juice that may run down your chin. So what could you be comparing a poem to right now? She's referencing it as a piece of fruit. So something juicy and something good. It, again, we're talking about our poem, is ready and ripe now whenever you are. So stanza 1, if I had to summarize it, when reading a poem, bite in as it gets started. And enjoy the contents. Now in case you're like, Miss Biggs, where did you get contents from? I'm taking that from the juice that's going to run down your chin. Because that's what's inside the metaphorical fruit. So the contents of our poem is what we need to be able to enjoy. Cool? All right, cool. I'm going to change colors, I guess, for stanza 2 to make my life a little bit easier, and yours too. For stanza 2, you do not need a knife or fork or spoon or plate or napkin or tablecloth. So is there a formal way to do this? I don't think so, because if I think about formal fancy dinners, there's always at least one knife, several forks, several spoons, and there's a tablecloth and there are napkins, and I always spill something on the tablecloth and I get embarrassed and it's not a good time. So poetry doesn't need to be treated formally. Because, I don't know about you guys, I never enjoy a big fancy dinner where I feel like there's pressure and people are watching and blah, blah, blah. All right. So for our final stanza, for there is no core or stem or rind or pit or seed or skin to throw away. So inside, again, we're referencing back to our fruits. Some fruits have cores, some have stems, some have rinds, some have pits, some have seeds, some have skin. And you just don't need those parts. I don't know, maybe you're someone who eats the skin of the peach. I'm not that person, but you do you. But Eve Merriam is telling us There is none of these things, no core or stem or rind or pit or seed or skin that needs to be thrown away. So everything in a poem is essential. Stanza 3 already examined. So if I had to summarize the entire poem, when reading a poem, go ahead and don't be afraid of it. Go ahead and bite in and get started to enjoy the contents of our poem. You don't need a formal way to do it. Oh, hold on. Is my camera behind me? There we go. You don't need a formal way to do it, like with a knife or a fork or spoon or plate or napkin or tablecloth. It doesn't need to be that formal. Poetry is just ready for us to be enjoyed. And everything in the poem can be enjoyed and taken in because there is nothing that needs to go to waste. Awesome. So now let's look for some figurative language together. I may miss some, and that's okay. I'm just going to find a few. One really obvious one is our use of repetition of structure. So they have this list here at the end. So, or stem, or rind, or pit, or seed. And I feel like that use of repetition is really to show us that, like, it doesn't need have any of these things. We can enjoy all of it. So it's just really putting home that idea you can enjoy the entire poem. Obviously, it compares the poem to a piece of fruit that you have to enjoy, lick the juice off of. And we also have some rhyming. Bite in your chin. Those lines rhyme. They don't really have many other rhyming lines, so it's really more of a free verse poem. But I feel like we're okay. So I have some questions for us. Let's see if they'll show up. Questions to consider for the poem. What is the argument the author is presenting about poetry? So we've already established we feel like, looking at our poem, the author is saying poetry is meant to be enjoyed. And all of it should be enjoyed. What does the second stanza suggest about analyzing poetry? So go to my second stanza. Do not need a knife or fork or spoon or plate or napkin or tablecloth. We already said that it doesn't need to be treated formally. You can just go ahead and enjoy it. There's nothing that needs to be there to help you with your poem. And our last stanza. Well, everything in our poem is essential. Nothing needs to go to waste. All right, now we're going to look at one that's a little bit more formal structure, so that might be a little bit easier. Now we are doing Hope is a Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, sings the tune without the words, and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and number my lines. Excellent. And I'm going to group them into our stanzas because we have 3 stanzas. Excellent. And this is one of those poems where the first line is also the title. So we're good to go there, but I'm just going to recognize that it has the title. And it's by Emily Dickinson. Check. All right. So stanza by stanza. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, sings the tune without the words, and never stops at all. So again, we're talking about something very important in this poem. This whole poem is going to be focusing on hope. And hope is the thing with feathers. So hope is a metaphor and it's metaphorically being spoken to as like a bird. So hope is the thing with feathers. It perches in the song and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So hope is inside our soul. It sings the tune without the words, and it never stops at all. And that's really important because a statement like always or never, very important to us. So, stanza 1, it really just talks about hope is like a bird, but it uses a metaphor of it. There we go. Hope is like a bird, singing and persistent. My E did not turn out there, but we'll live. Okay. So I feel good for stanza 1. Now for stanza 2. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. Now we know from stanza 1, little bird is hope, so we're again talking about hope. So if we had to look something up, like sweetest in the gale, so gale's like high winds, and if you have to look something up for a poem, that's perfectly fine. I have to do that all the time, and I'm a teacher. And sore, or bad, must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. So abash would be like, I guess, to hurt. Doop, doop, doop. I Googled it. Waka. And to bash is to make someone feel embarrassed, disconcerted, ashamed, or hurt. So we're good to go. So, sweetest in the high winds is heard, and bad must be the storm that could hurt the little bird that kept so many warm. So we already know we've got metaphorical little bird, so the winds and the storm have to be something else too. So if we're talking about hurting or silencing hope with our little bird, what kind of things could silence hope? Like bad times, dark times, loneliness. I'll take any of those. So, sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. So it must be a really extreme bad time, dark time, or lonely time to silence our little bird of hope that kept so many of us warm. So again, we still have positive imagery for like our bird keeping us warm and providing. All right. So let's see. If I had to summarize it. Only extreme times can challenge hope. All right. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. So we still know our it is hope / our little bird. I've heard it, bird / hope, in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. So the bird has been there in the chillest or like coldest land and on the strangest sea, so like a faraway place. So even when Emily Dickinson, or like, you know, speaker of our poem, has been in the chillest lands, like the coldest places or the farthest away places, her little bird, her hope, has been there. Yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. So if I had to summarize this, hope always gives, and it never asks for anything back. All right, I feel good about that. Questions to consider. Why does Dickinson use the symbol of a bird to represent hope? Okay, I just feel like this. Yeah. I feel like Dickinson uses the symbol of a bird to represent hope because, like, it's a very delicate thing, but it's very persistent. Like, it's always there for us. What are some arguments the seeker makes about hope? Hope never stops at all. It can be found in really harsh situations. And even in the faraway places or really cold situations, it's always there, and it never asks for anything in return. What does the storm represent? How does it affect the little bird? Storm is like bad times, dark times, or loneliness, or really extreme situations, but the bird is always there. Check out It's Learning. You have further directions for today, but I miss you guys.